First of all, congratulations that you even have this problem because most people have the exact opposite problem. They cannot begin to start working. They just procrastinate stuff and they're too lazy to actually be productive. You, on the other hand, have a problem at the opposite end of the spectrum. You work too much and this eventually leads you to burning out. So during my self-improvement journey, I've been on both sides. I've been on this side where I didn't feel like working, and I've been on this side where I've worked too much and eventually just fatigued myself and burnt out. So the reason why I was actually burning out was because my time horizon was too short. I only used to consider the day that I was working. So I needed to get the most amount of work done and I need to absolutely kill myself during that particular day. One key thing to remember is that your life isn't just one day. It's actually way longer than that. You need to think of productivity in terms of a month or at least in terms of a week and not in terms of a day. This will actually lift some amount of pressure off you and you won't feel so guilty while you're actually resting, because you're not going to try to max out each and every single day. Once you realize that, okay, you have 30 days where you have to be productive, then you're not going to just try and bench the most amount of weight that you can on day one, knowing fair well that this is unsustainable and you have to go through 30 days. You will actually begin to subconsciously look at a more sustainable approach. So this is the first principle that you need to remember. Expand your horizon. Stop looking at productivity in terms of a day and start looking at it in terms of a week or in terms of a month. Then you need to ask yourself, what is the most effective tactic available such that I can maximize the amount of productivity on this particular month as opposed to I can maximize productivity for this particular day. Cal Newport is this computer scientist and he's written this book called Deep Work. In this, Cal Newport actually claims that the maximum amount of highly focused work that an individual can do tends to be around 3 to 4 hours. And this is a trained individual. So I'm assuming you are this person because, well, you clicked on this video about not burning out. And once you cross this threshold of 3 to 4 hours of deep focused work, then you tend to become burnt out the next day. So you need to figure out what is the maximum volume of work that you can do in a particular day. Now, this volume might differ based upon the work that you're doing. If you're solving math equations, doing calculus, or doing complex programming, I don't think so it can be over 4 hours. That's when you are going to be burnt out. Your circuits are going to be fried. If it's more like admin tasks, responding to emails, I don't know, arranging things, then it can be way longer. It can go up to like 8 hours or something. So essentially your goal is going to be to figure out two kinds of limits. The very first limit is your maximum daily tolerance limit. Like how much amount of work can you do in a day without feeling burnt out or tired or slightly fatigued the next day. So that's the first limit that you need to figure out. The next limit that you need to figure out is what is your maximum weekly tolerance? How many days can you like consistently do this amount of work without feeling burnt out? So figuring these two limits is going to require some trial and error. Like you need to experiment with different working hours and spread them across the week differently to figure out what actually works for you. But I would imagine that for most people, their daily working capacity is between 3 to 5 hours and your weekly working capacity is between 20 to 30 hours. I would highly recommend staying within these ranges. Crossing them would probably lead to you burning out unless the tasks that you're doing are really not cognitively demanding. They could be something like arranging meetings or attending meetings.
For those of you who are new here, my name is Jibreal Khan. I help men become the most productive versions of themselves and get rid of all their addictions to instant gratification. If you would like to have a one-on-one meeting with me, then check out the link in the description.
And the way that I got this principle was from, well, working out. Like every single athlete knows that they have a weekly tolerance limit and a daily tolerance limit. Working out more than these limits actually leads to negative effects. You actually become weaker as an athlete. Your performance actually begins to decrease if you cross these limits. And this is exactly how I think of my productivity now. If I cross these limits, I am going to be fatigued. I'm not going to be as creative. I'm not going to process things as fast. I'm not going to do my best work. And therefore, I'm diminishing my ability. I'm diminishing my productivity. Set these limits in stone and never ever cross them. Like these days, I literally sit with a stopwatch. And as soon as I hit my 5 hour mark, I stop working. Like there's no point of working any longer because now it's just going to have negative effects in my life. And in terms of my weekly limit, I tend to be exhausted by day 6. By day 6, I'm kind of like burnt out. I'm kind of like tired. So I take one day off. Now, some people might do it differently. Some people might prefer taking 2 days off. And if that works for you, if you feel really, really good and you feel like you're firing on all cylinders, if you take 2 days off, go ahead with 2 days. But you need to at least take one day off in a week. Like I've experimented with trying to take no days off in a week and it feels good, but the next week the fatigue actually builds up and you feel less creative, you feel dimmer, you don't enjoy the work that you're doing. So I would highly recommend taking at least 1 day off, and if possible, take 2 days off from time to time. You need to understand this perspective that you are not doing more work by crossing this daily limit. You're actually robbing yourself of future work. You're actually robbing the future you of productivity. It's like you're taking tomorrow's gains and using them today. And these gains are not even that good, because after the 4 or 5 hour mark, your performance really declines. So the work you're doing is not really your best work. So this is my tried and tested system of never burning out. If you operate within your daily limit and within your weekly limit, then you are not going to burn out, because this is your maximum tolerable volume. This is what your body can tolerate. Doing more has negative effects. Doing less is underdoing it. It's undertraining. So try to hit the sweet spot, and that is where you're going to feel the most fulfilled and you're going to get the most amount of work done. Another key thing to remember is that after you have operated at this fine limit for, let's say, a couple of months, maybe 2 or 3 months, then you might need to take a longer break to feel rejuvenated again. Now, so this break for me looks something like 3 to 7 days long, where I'm completely rejuvenated. This is where I travel. This is like a mini vacation that you need after every 3 or 4 months. But here's the brutal truth. Most people are investing their quality brain points into domains that don't necessarily yield a lot. Like, think about a worker, think about a manual laborer. This guy's working 8 hours a day, but all this work is going into something that is not going to yield success. Perhaps you might be doing the same thing. Perhaps all you're doing is pseudo productivity, working 8-9 hours on bullshit tasks. So make sure that you watch this video to figure out what are your highest priority items and only focus on working on them.